I do have my guest here with me, and we will be looking at the recently released World Economic Outlook report. Like I stated before, the IMF has reduced Nigeria's growth projection from 3.1% to 2.9%. That is about a 2.0% reduction by the IMF. And he's saying that Nigeria's inflation rate should ease to 25% in the year 2025. So much numbers being released, so many figures being released by the IMF. But my guest is here with me. He is the MD CEO of the ultra-violent microfinance bank. He is none other person than Bayonle Omoyele. Thank you, Mr. Bayo, for coming on the program today.
Thank you for having me. It's nice to be here again.
Nice to have you on the program. I would just like to get your reaction to all these numbers, that were in the World Economic Outlook report by the IMF. What are your thoughts on the projection so far? And of course, the GDP projection for 2024, the downsizing we also did see from the previous projections and the new ones. What are your thoughts on all these numbers and data from the IMF?
I will ask you for our money. Where's our 500,000? Yeah, Chiamaka, you're owing us 500,000.
What 500,000 now,
yeah.
Mr. Bayo?
Now let me explain this to you. It is very easy for people to come to a program like this to, say numbers, make references and all of that. But it's important to look at the peculiarities, right? I just asked you for 500,000. You are owing 500. I'm owing 500. Nigeria population is estimated to be around 230 million, and our total loan at the moment is estimated to be around 121 trillion. So 121 trillion divided by 230 million, what do you have? 500,000. You are owing 500. I'm owing 500. My daughter is owing 500. My wife is owing 500. That's the problem we are facing in the country at the moment. So, I checked the program going on, the World Bank, IMF, and I saw the outlines of the program. The Minister of Finance and coordination of the economy, built to talk on how to secure more finance options, how to get more loans to finance and infrastructures in the country. Our president is going to solidify all these investments and all of that. And I was pained because we can't continue doing this. We can't continue doing the same thing and expect different results. It's not going to happen. What stand aloof is CBN side chat. That was going to talk about how to increase our FX, how to encourage remittances from Nigerians living abroad. Apart from that, others is talking about loan, about finances, which is not going to take Nigeria to anywhere. It is easy for IMF to say that, Nigeria is going to grow in social percentage in 5 years, in 10 years. But the question is, do you understand the peculiarities of the country? We have issues that we Nigerians understand. What are the factors that determines the growth, that determines the expansion of the GDP? We are talking of productions. We are talking of inflation. We are talking about the exchange rates. All of these problems, will be able to solve this problem? The question is no. The present Nigerian budget, when it was passed, it was pegged at $750 to Naira.
That's 750 Naira to a dollar.
750 Naira to dollar. But right now, what is dollar talking about? We are down to around 1,700. Do you understand what that means in Nigeria implication? So we need to understand how this problem is going to be solved. Presently, our headline inflation is still 37.2, right? Our exchange rate is not going down. Even there's a projection that says that, God forbid, that it could be up to 2,000 by December. The rise is the food production is not to write them about. The cost of living is not to write them about. The fueling, immediately Nigeria, the president says that inflation is gone. You understand what is happening in the country. I spend almost 100,000 to fuel my car on a weekly basis. My staff, they complain and all of that. So all of this problem together. We'll tell Nigerians that we are not saying this thing coming to reality.
Mr. Bayo, permit me to interject at this point. You have made, very valid concerns. You also did talk about, the peculiarities of Nigeria. As it is now, it seems as though, Nigeria is different. Nigeria is an outlier compared to other major economies, even here in Africa. But you have raised very valid concerns around, the rising debt burden here in Nigeria, even though some economic watchers or economic analysts would say that it's not new to have governments borrow. So why should Nigeria borrowing be a problem? What would your thoughts be on that?
Yeah, actually, it is good to borrow. In fact, I encourage people, especially when you want to start a business, I'll tell you, try to borrow. Now, when you borrow money to start up a business, it allows you to put in more energy so that what you're using that money for could be much productive in order to pay back the loan, pay back the accrued interest, and equally have an income to yourself. But now let's use that metrics and compare to Nigerian reality. We have been taking loan for what? Are we taking the loan for production, or we are taking the loan for consumption? But Nigeria case, most of the loan we have been taking is for consumption. The 2024 budget, we call it took loan to finance the budget deficits. Who does that in the country? And we're saying that we want to grow. We need to be determined. We need to be radical and be ready for the change. Okay. Recently, World Bank Vice President says that Nigeria is going to be better in the next 15 years, right? When I saw it, I was like, yeah, truly, all things being equal, Nigeria should be better in the next 10 to 15 years. But the point is, we need to tread on the right path in order to achieve that result. The peculiarities, the salient issues in this country needs to be addressed. Okay, presently we are on the path of a change, right? Which is presumed in the next 4 years, in the next 8 years, if Nigeria votes back the president, he's still going to be the president. But if Nigeria says that we are tired of you, Mr. President, let's allow another person to govern this country, if that person comes in, would that person maintain what is on ground or change it?
So if
it changes, you should know that that 15 years prediction might not come to reality. So these are the peculiarities we need to understand. And I was telling Nigerians, I was discussing one of my professors, and I told him, Nigeria, we need to understand that this is our country. Irrespective of whosoever that is at the helm of affairs, that is in power, we need to understand that the 4 years of their government is our life. We must ensure that they do the right thing. We must support it. It's gone are the days where your choice of candidate is not in government, and you feel like, no, I'm not going to support this government. I'm going to, say evil things about this government. Gone are those days. These days, 4 years of that administration is part of our lives. It's part of our children's life. Okay, and we need to ensure that they do the right thing, monitor, and equally support. Right. So if we can do all of these, I can tell you that in that 15 years' time, Nigeria is going to be a better place to live.
We remain optimistic with all hands on deck, like Mr. Bayonle has said. It's not the time to say, oh, I would not, support the policies of the previous government. There should be policy continuation, even though on a social media poll, 0% of Nigerians say they are optimistic. Quite unfortunate numbers there, but at this point we will go on a short break. When we return, we will be looking at specifics from that report in relation to Nigeria and the sub-Saharan African region. Do stay, we'll be back after the break. And you are still watching Business Daily, coming to you live on Trust TV. And just before the break, we were looking at the recently released World Economic Outlook report by the World Bank, IMF. As I did say, the current IMF World Bank meeting, or there is the ongoing IMF World Bank meeting, which is currently going on in Washington, and that is the spring meeting. And a lot has come out so far from that meeting, including this report that I did mention. And this report regarding Nigeria is saying that Nigeria's growth projection has been reduced from 3.1% to 2.9% for the year 2025. We did go through a social media comment with 0% of Nigerians remaining optimistic even regarding this report. And some are saying, oh, we should not allow an international agency to determine the trajectory of our growth, but we should rather depend on research and data from here in Nigeria. So much to unpack today on the program, but I still have my guest here with me, who is the MD CEO of the ultra-violent microfinance bank, in the person of Mr. Bayonle Omoyele. Thank you again for coming on the program today.
Thank you.
I will want for us to look at specifics from this report. The IMF did say that the downgrade was due to, concerns around agriculture. It did mention, flooding, which it said was a major challenge to the Nigeria's agricultural space, and also did mention concerns, around the economy, that is policy discontinuation, policy fluctuations come, from the government, and external shocks also, as well as security challenges. What do you make of all of this challenges that the IMF did mention, from agri to security to policy inconsistencies to, all of this? What are your thoughts on these concerns from the IMF?
I will take it a bit further. Now let us use a situation that could happen in this country. Have you ever noticed how Nigerians behave around Nigerians, and compared to how Nigerians behave around white people?
Around foreigners.
Around
quite
foreigners.
Differently.
Quite different. We kind of see them like whatsoever they say is validated. Whatsoever they say is correct. They could not make any mistake. Now let's take back to government.
But is that a generic thing now? No, Would every Nigerian behave that way?
I think it's a Nigerian thing, right? It's in our blood. Though some Nigerians are exceptional, some that have attained a particular level in their career and attained a particular level of success, they know that these people equally needs me for them to achieve whatever they want to achieve. Now, let's take that to government. I would say that our government had seen World Bank, had seen IMF as, I don't want to say God, like whatsoever they say is validated. And we have data in this country. We have data that we can rely on. And let me give an instance. I was watching President Tinubu sometime around 5 months ago. And he said, if power is not stable in the next 4 years, don't vote for me for second time. And I was like, wow, this is a powerful word. And recently, we can all testify that apart from the national grid failure recently, the power system in this country has been seeing kind of changes. In my area, I know the number of hours I used to have light before, but now it has changed. And I think it's helping the present situation of the country because we can rely on the power, right? Now, imagine that IMF utterance came from the president. That, hello Nigerians, in the next 4 years, we should be able to achieve this. We should be able to achieve that. We should be able to achieve the way we achieve that. Nigerians will tend to believe that more than what IMF says, because IMF doesn't understand the peculiarities that we are facing. IMF will not, we cannot hold them accountable for their projection, but we can hold our presidents, we can hold people in government accountable for whatsoever they say. I think that is my stand.
But are these concerns not valid? Because indeed there is flooding. Indeed it is affecting our output in the agri space. Indeed we have concerns around security and global shocks or external shocks now around trade and all of those. Are those not valid points that the IMF is making?
They are very valid. But the question is there no flooding in the United States? Security challenges are not there. I'm coming from the perspective of Nigerians, not over-relying on IMF, not over-relying on World Bank. What they said is quite correct, but it will be more germane for us as Nigerians to see that this is coming from our own government, not foreign body, not foreign institutions. And let me tell you, it is a scope, it is a strategy. The trick is they paint your problem for you. So, and they give you the solution, and most likely the solution is on the back of finance, right? Now let's compare this to what China did. When China discovered the problem and they were intentional about it, United States were producing, and China says, come on, we need to, if we cannot beat these people, let's make them, let's try to produce what they are producing. And China started, it became a point. United States do not have choice but to see how they can integrate with China in order to ensure that China is not a competitor to them. So if Nigeria sees ourselves that way, like instead of we over relying on these people. Let's see how we can make ourselves a voice to the extent that they will not have a choice, but to, some policies in some occasions dance to our tunes. Of course, we have the agricultural problem. Nigeria is not producing as expected. We have the insecurity. All of these, we have it. But it is important for Nigerians to see to this problem by itself on how to get out of this problem, not over relying on IMF and World Bank.
Mr. Bayonle, they're corroborating the views of most Nigerians in social media about Nigeria over-depending on data and research from these Bretton Woods institutions like the IMF, the World Bank, and the likes. Well, let's move away from that now. You have made your point very, very clear. But I would like to speak regarding the effect of agriculture now, or the effect of the flooding on our GDP projection. Even without the IMF saying what the IMF has said, if you are someone who closely monitors these trends, you will know that indeed it will impact on the GDP figures moving forward. So what are your expectations, and how can Nigeria balance concerns around agri but still having growth being recorded in our GDP?
Okay, now let's come back home. We have sorted the IMF and World Bank. You see, it is imperative for Nigerian government to see to these problems, right? There is no way Nigerian economy is going to grow. There is no way the GDP will improve if we are not producing. Consumption will not take us to anywhere. We have to be a producer. And you see, all of these are interrelated. By the time we are producing, the headline inflation is going to drop. Food is part of the major factor that contributes to inflation. It's going to drop. By the time the insecurity is gone, we're able to empower our security men to do what they're supposed to do. Farmers will be able to go to the farm, farm produce, come back to the nation. People are able to access food. If that happens, CBN will no longer use monetary policies to mop up cash from circulation. See, the mopping of cash from circulation is only another factor that will not allow the GDP to grow. So when we produce, the money in circulation will match up with the number of products in the market. So if that happens, there won't be need of using treasury bill to attract people to invest with the government. That will stop, and if that stops, Nigeria is going to be better. So the government needs to see this as problem and be intentional on how to solve this problem. Okay, we have seen cases of Borno where the flood happened recently, and there was a report that some of these could have been averted, right? So we need to hold people accountable. If you are supposed to do something, you could not do it, and something happened, we should be able to hold you accountable, right? So if we can implement all of these, I would say that the GDP of this country is going to grow. And we have seen it in the 2010 to 2000 to 2010, how GDP improves in this country. But recently, it's barely 3.5%, right? So if we can produce more, ensure that there is security balance in the country, ensure that the monetary policies by CBN works with fiscal policies in order to reduce the headline inflation, I'm sure this country is going to be a better place.
You made a point that I would like for you to emphasize on the more. You talked about the CBN mopping up liquidity because of too much money in circulation. That is inflation. But you also did say that because there is too much money in circulation, we shouldn't expect growth in the GDP. Can you help us understand how that does affect GDP growth and how we can create that balance where, on the one hand, we have the CBN, of course, tightening MPR, that is the monetary policy rate, and on the other hand, also prioritizing growth for the economy? Okay,
let's do a small scenario. We're both Nigerian, and I have 10,000. You are a farmer, you want to sell your produce. The total money in Nigeria, let's say, is 10,000. You have produce that is 5,000, right? So I go to the market to buy your produce, and I buy your produce at 5,000. What happens to me? I have 5,000 left, right? That 5,000 left that I have is going to affect this country globally in headline inflation. But as I have 10,000 as the Nigerian in whole have 10,000, but your produce is 10,000 or 15,000. So I come to you to buy your produce. You already have produce of 10,000, 50,000, and I'm able to buy your produce at 10,000. The produce you have, maybe you still have extra, or it becomes zero after the purchase. It makes a perfect economy. So it means that at every point in time, the total money in circulation must match up with produce. So if it does not, you have inflation. But if it matches, then you have a perfect economy.
Which is bringing us back to concerns around production. It's like a cycle now.
Cycle that leads to GDP, right? So there's another perspective to this, which is unemployment rates, right? So if you have a perfect economy, you are able to. You don't need to pitch Nigerian. You don't need to talk too much. You don't need to fly abroad to convince investors to come to the country. They will come because there is a perfect economy. There is a system working. When investors says that, oh, your system is working, your economy is booming, they will come over to invest. And when they come to invest, what happens? Your unemployment rate reduces. When unemployment reduces, your GDP is going to grow. That is the salient issue that we need to talk about.
Well explained, Mr. Bayo. But I would like for us to speak regarding inflation. Even though you have, shied away from this IMF report, I will take you back there with the IMF saying that Nigeria's inflation rate should decline to about 25% in the year 2025. Currently, like you rightly stated, 37.2% is what the headline inflation is at this moment. And that goes to say that there would be an increase of about 17% if the IMF's projection indeed comes to pass. And, whether or not the IMF says what the IMF says, inflation is a major concern. So what policy direction would you be promoting, or would you be clamoring for at this point, to accelerate the inflation in the coming year, maybe the last quarter in the coming year now, 2025?
Okay, when I read that part, inside me I said, amen, 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 let it come to pass. But the honest truth is, if that happens, it's going to make Nigeria a better place. Obviously. And I used to tell people, and I will keep saying it, Nigeria is the best country in the world. The Nigerian is, I don't know how to explain it to people better. You just need to see Nigerian the way it is. Like, a country that is full of abundance, that's full of skills, that is full of people at the helms of affairs, even in the world, doing a lot of great things. Just by the way. So part of the things Nigeria needs to do to attain that 25% or even lesser are the things we just mentioned. And government needs to be intentional about it. In fact, I don't know why government is shying away from this, because it is kind of affecting the government more.
But we have seen, efforts by the monetary side of government now, the CBN, constant reduction or constant increase, rather, in the MPR. Those are very major hawkish policy steps that the CBN did take. Don't you agree?
I won't say that CBN is not trying, but I will say that CBN needs to equally see how we can match up the MPR with fiscal policies in order to get the best results. MPR only might not do the magic. MPR, because by the time we leverage on MPR only, it equally affects other things. Okay, it affects the cost of fund. Okay, gone are the days when you can access fund at 80% per annum, 20% per annum. But these days it's 30, 40% per annum. And this is affecting the cost of doing business, right? If it's affecting the cost of doing business, it trickles down to the bottom of the pyramid. So if CBN can see to matching up fiscal policies with the MPR, I can tell you that it's going to be a better place. Now, we're talking of fiscal policies. What are we talking about? Okay, part of the report of IMF says that government should reduce expenditure, right? If government reduces expenditure, there is no way fiscal policy is going to work, because a contract will not be approved, or minimal contract will be approved. If minimal contract is being approved, what happens to those that are working in that space? Right, it increases unemployment rates. So I'm saying that CBN needs to match up the MPR with fiscal policies in order to attain that 25%.
And that brings us to the Ministry of Finance and the coordinating, or the Minister of Finance and the coordinating Minister of the Economy, who's currently also at the IMF spring meeting. did mention, concerns around getting more loans, like you have rightly pointed out already. But what specific measures or what structural reforms do you want to see come from the fiscal side now?
If Mr. Wale Edun is listening to this program right now, I will tell him that, Mr. Wale Edun, you are doing a fantastic job. Being in Washington at the moment, you are representing Nigerian well, but it's important for Ministry of Finance to look inward rather outward. We have seen that present loan exposure of Nigeria is around 121 trillion, which comprises both domestic and external. Right? So there is a need for us to look inward, to grow our economy inward. Okay, look how to finances budgets inward instead of over-relying on IMF, over-relying on World Bank. And the implication is we have not attained stability in exchange rates, right? For if you take a loan today, and the loan is at 1,700 exchange rates, for instance, and by December it grows to 2,000. Let's say that $1,000 was taken at 1,750. It means that 1,750,000 was taken as loan in naira. But by December, if the exchange rate grows to 2,000, it means the cost of that loan has changed from 1,750,000 to 2 million naira. So there is a need for us to stabilize before we attract more debt to this country. I will tell Mr. Wale Edun, please, sir, there is a need for you to look inward and see how we can grow a Nigerian economy organically, instead of over-relying on World Bank and IMF.
Look inward and see how you can grow the Nigerian economy organically before looking outward to the IMF and to World Bank for funding. Mr. Bayonle Omoyele, who is the MD CEO of Ultraviolet Microfinance Bank, speaking extensively to the recent World Economic Outlook report released by the World Bank IMF at the ongoing spring meeting of the World Bank IMF in Washington, D.C. Thank you, Mr. Bayo, for all the insights you've shared with us today on the program.
Thank you for having me.
Thank you very much. And this is where we draw the curtains on today's edition of Business Daily. But keep the conversation going across all our social media platforms, on Facebook, on YouTube, on X, and of course on Twitter. On Instagram, share with us your comments, and we will be there to interact with you at the back end. Thank you for watching. My name is Chiamaka Enendu, and bye for now.